Bluefords were hoping to be here today. Unfortunately, the week has been very stressful, hearing the details of their son's death, so they're not going to be able to make it. But they've asked these two gentlemen, who are close friends of them and supporters of the campaign, to speak on their behalf. Our first speaker is Dan Siegel, former legal advisor to Mayor Blueford.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming out. This is getting to be a kind of regular meeting that we have to express our concern and our outrage about the City of Oakland's response to the murder of a 17-year-old in East Oakland on May 6th. And as Scott said, Mr. and Mrs. Blueford have essentially been required to take a day or two off because of the shock and dismay of receiving a partial police report and the response or lack of response by city officials here in Oakland. And I know exactly how they feel. We're here as their lawyers, as their friends. Personally, I'm also here as the grandfather of an African-American child who I can imagine being in the spot that Alan Blueford was in on May 6th someday, and don't want him to have the same fate. We finally gotten a partial police report from the Oakland Police Department approximately 5 months after the shooting of Adam Blueford. And I'm sure many of you have had the opportunity to look at this report and notice all the redactions and notice the lack of an interview or statement by Officer Masso, who was the trigger man in this killing, or by his partner, Officer Felber. And I assume that someday, somehow, the Oakland Police Department will stop protecting Masso and Felber and force them to give an accounting of their actions on the night of May 5th and the early morning of May 6, 2002. But we've learned some things that are shocking and, in fact, basically vindicate the worst fears we had about the killing of Alan Blueford. And when you read that report and you kind of reenact what occurred from the point of view of the people who were on the ground, and particularly young Alan, what we have clear is that 3 young men were in a place where they were lawfully entitled to be late on May 5th. They were there to meet some friends. Some 2 officers rolled up on them, demanded to know who they were and what they were doing. Alan ran away. He didn't want to be encountered and have to deal with these officers. And Officer Masso chased him on the street for several blocks through the dark East Oakland streets. And as Alan got to the 9200 block, he apparently tripped over a curb and then banged into a fence and then landed flat on his back after being chased by this officer. And according to many of the witnesses who were interviewed, Officer Masso came up to him while he was lying flat on his back, took his gun, aimed it at him, and fired 3 shots into Alan's body at a time when Alan posed absolutely no threat to anyone. They left him there. Officer Masso, who had first put out on the radio that he was in a gun battle, looked down and saw that he was bleeding. Of course, the other officers were much more concerned about him than they were about Alan, and bundled him into a police car and took him off to Highland Hospital, where he got treatment and I suppose eventually figured out that he had shot himself. Nonetheless, they put out the lie that there was a gun battle between Alan Blueford and these 3 police officers. And of course, they have maintained since then the slander and defamation in an effort to cover up their own misdeeds. I suppose that most of what I've said is within your knowledge, not news today. We're standing out here, though, in front of Oakland City Hall instead of some other place because we want to emphasize the lack of responsibility, the accountability by everyone who works in this building. Despite the horrifying details of the death of Alan Blueford, we have heard not word one from any members of the City Council. Instead, what we hear is the whining by Larry Reed about people disrupting council meetings. No irony in that statement, right? The concern about disrupting a City Council meeting versus the disruption of a young man's life by shooting him down in the street like an animal or the disruption of the lives of his family members, his parents, brothers, sisters, and cousins. They just don't seem to get it here. We hear not one word of concern from the mayor's office, from the city administrator's office, perhaps some crocodile tears here or there, but not any effort to make amends, to vindicate the actions of the cops who shot and killed Alan Blueford. And then you wonder, right? You wonder why Judge Henderson is poised in December to appoint a monitor to take over control of the Oakland Police Department. And as much as any of us hate to trust in the federal government or to think that we want the federal government coming in and running our city, frankly, I don't see a better alternative at this point. This leadership, mayor after mayor, police chief after police chief, have now had this riders, the Allen consent decree, for over 10 years. They can't seem to make it work. They can't seem to instill a system of discipline to make sure that rogue police officers are punished. In fact, they seem to revel in hiring rogue police officers. This Masso was apparently chased out of the New York Police Department because of his brutality towards people who were in custody there. And so he comes out to the West Coast and he's hired in Oakland despite that record. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Did they figure he's just the kind of guy they want on this police department? I think the answer to that question is obvious. So we are here. We're going to keep coming back. If they're worried about some noise at city council meetings, I think we can promise them a lot worse unless they start to take action. Of course, there's an election in 4 weeks, and many of these members of the council are up for re-election. I personally hope that none of them are re-elected, that they're all sent back to private life where they belong, and that perhaps we can elect some people in Oakland who take their jobs as being responsible and accountable for the welfare of the people of the city seriously.
In that release, it said that you guys were calling on the resignation of certain people. Is that correct, or is that release wrong?
Oh, it's certainly not wrong. We need to clean house. We need a police chief who is strong, who is willing to discipline these rogue cops, who is willing to actually comply with the orders of the federal court. And I think we now have the 5th police chief in a row who is unwilling to do that. We have a city administrator who should probably find her way back to San Jose because she's been a failure here, hasn't done the job that she's supposed to do, and again is just an apologist for police abuse and police brutality.
Did the police report address the gun that the police reportedly said that there was Alan's fingerprints on it?
According to the police report, there was a gun that was recovered approximately 20 feet from Alan's body. And according to the police report, Alan's left thumbprint was on an ammunition clip. Some issues are not resolved. Where was the ammunition clip when it was recovered? The pictures we have show that it was not in the gun. We don't know who put it there. We don't know a lot about it. And before we jump to conclusions and accept the idea that it was Alan's thumbprint on that ammunition clip, I'm going to remind everyone that one of the Blueford family attorneys, John Burris, won a case a few years ago, and in order to win that case, he had to prove, and did prove, that Oakland police officers planted an assault rifle on a person in Oakland whom they arrested. So I'm not making any accusations here, but I'm not putting anything past them. One of the things I would like to know is, what is that gun? Where did it come from? The police report has conveniently blacked out any reference to that. We know what the gun is in terms of what brand and caliber it was, but when was it manufactured? Who was owned it? Where was it sold? These are questions that need to be answered.
And it's the family position that he didn't own.
The family's understanding is that Alan did not own or possess the gun.
We know that fingerprint evidence is open to a lot of chapters. The bold statement, the bald statement, the police reporters that there was a fingerprint that when Alan was not in it. There are other fingerprints on that gun. We don't know what other fingerprints might be associated with other people that might have been on the scene. I always question, in my cases as a defense attorney, police officers' fingerprints get eliminated? It's a real question. The evidence in the report regarding fingerprint evidence does not point out the number of areas of association with Alan Blueford. And there is no definitive report yet that clearly states that this is Alan's fingerprint. We have to analyze it and see what the points are. Usually in fingerprint evidence they say that there's some possible association or lack of ability to eliminate this person. Alan is eliminated for all other prints on that weapon. There are 3 fingerprints, and now there are DNA evidence that suggests other places. But here's what I want to say, and I hope that people can relate to this. As a parent, and Dan talks about himself as a parent, and as any of us, when I read the report and realized that the police officer chased Alan, and when he shot Alan while Alan was on the ground, Alan didn't have a weapon in his hand. The credible evidence put together from all the witnesses in various statements, some that are conflicting, of course, in the police report, Alan did not have a gun in his hand at the time he was shot. We cannot allow our police department to have the mentality of shooting people under those circumstances. It cannot exist in our society. We will not allow it to go unchallenged. The other thing that is so terrible for us to digest, for the Blueford family to take in, is that the police report from various witnesses, a number of witnesses say that what Alan said, "Why did you shoot me? I didn't do anything." Those were his last words. And that's what the family is living with today. How does a mother and a father and a brother and a sister, how does the community deal with that? His last words, with no weapon in his hand, no weapon on him at the time the officer approached him and shot him while he was on the ground. So why did you do this? I didn't do anything. And he died. He died right there. We can't allow that kind of crazy cowboy mentality, that killer instinct in our police department. We have to root it out of our community. We have to have respect for ourselves, for our families, and for our children. If we don't love our children, if we don't love ourselves enough to not allow that, then we have a lot of soul searching, a lot of work to do with ourselves.
Would you please state spell the first and last name and what your relationship is to them?
I'm Walter Riley. I'm an attorney. R-I-L-E-Y is the last name. W-A-L-T-E-R is the first name. I'm an attorney, and I are both attorneys. We do work in civil rights. I do criminal defense, Dan does criminal defense. We understand this. I do police misconduct.
It's you, Dan, and John Burris.
John Burris is representing on a 1983 claim, the civil rights claim, the wrongful death claim against the Oakland Police Department, the city of Oakland.
But not on the Blueford.
Well, we're part of the Blueford's legal team in the sense they talk to us. We're part of the solidarity movement. We're part of the discussions about what way to go. Which way to go with this. The Bluefords want to see some change in the city of Oakland, as we all do.
Now that you have the police report, what are the next 1 or 2 steps in the process of pursuing justice for Alan Blueford?
Well, I think that what's going to happen now is a lot more gathering, talking to people, trying to bring in other community organizations. We so far are getting a number of other community organizations, some community-based organizations giving a lot of support to this work. But what we have to do is get the DA to prosecute. We need to have the DA's report. The investigation has to be complete. There is enough time for that to have been done. The next step is to get the DA to make a statement. Are they going to prosecute, or are they going to allow this to go unpunished? And after that, we still have to build a movement to eliminate this kind of police force, to eliminate the mentality that exists in the Oakland command structure, and that a community, the powers in this community.
Is there an anticipated date for the DA report? Because there's reports from investigations for murders 4 and 5 years ago that the DA still has not completed.
Well, I would say that the DA's, having done homicide cases, I would say that the DA has enough evidence in this case to make a decision. The witnesses are finite. They're not witnesses that are scattered, that have disappeared, that are all over the country, or even out of the city. They're there. They've got witnesses. We have witness reports from the police. We have police officers who were there. The shooter was there. We don't have that statement that's now made public, but the shooter was there. We have a police department that has a protocol that they've established for training police officers. There's enough for the DA to make a decision. There is physical evidence from the coroner's report, the body of Alan Blueford, shot, riddled with holes, lying on the ground, bleeding to death. We have the physical scene. There is not a lot that's needed. The law is clear. That is murder. The police officer shot him without cause while he was on the ground. Now, he can make up all kinds of excuses about he might have been afraid. But he's afraid because it's in a black community or a Latino community or a community of poor people. He's afraid because he can claim that somebody threatened him. He's afraid because he does not want to serve that community in a way that protects. His fear comes out of his bias, his upbringing, his training in the Oakland Police Department, and the training that he brought with him from New York, from Iraq. That's where his fear comes from, not from anything real when Alan is lying on the ground. And those are the things that we have to deal with. And we need to demand some action. We need something more from our DA. Our DA is doing nothing, and we had a rally at the DA's office this week, and we could get no answer. We didn't even get sympathy. We had a tone of voice when we talked to the assistant DA, who was upset that we were there and that we dared to ask him questions. He had an attitude that we shouldn't be there, and he was not going to be friendly with us. Didn't have the PR sensibility to try and be decent as a public servant. That's the Oakland DA's office, and we need to hold them accountable for that. It's also an elected office, but we need to hold them accountable. We need to hold our entire system accountable for this kind of thing.
So we are also in touch with the United States Attorney for the Northern District of California, Melinda Haig. Some of us have been meeting with her since the time of the Oscar Grant killing, and she has been in contact with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice in Washington, whether they're really doing anything or just making believe we don't know. But we will continue to provide them with information, provide them with our views as to what's occurring in Oakland, and perhaps on a good day there could be a convergence between the Department of Justice and what Judge Henderson is doing to take some control over the Oakland Police Department.
I have a real question regarding the police officer's wound in his foot. When we look at crimes, we look at any incident, we always wonder what is the what happened, and is there a motivation for anything? In order to charge people with crimes, we look for areas of motivation that's involved for any kind of. A police officer ran up on a kid on the ground and shot him 3 times on the ground. 3 bullets went through him. We know that. We know that it does not comport with reasonable policy or whether or not he had a right to shoot this person. And then we also know that at some point or another there's a bullet hole in his foot. Nothing threatening, not even threatening any vital part of his foot, so far as we know. No real injury, some blood with the bullet hole through. When did it occur? I'd say if we're doing motivation questioning, what he realized was he shot a kid without reason and shot himself. Now that's what I'm going to say has to be answered. It starts with that. If I were doing a trial, I'd want him to answer that. If I'm questioning him, I want him to answer that. And the answer has to be reasonable. And we need to look at the physical evidence to see if it supports him being shot in the foot before or after he shot Alan Blueford.
His whole gunshot wound with the ballistic match for the ones in that.
There's no doubt that it was the police officer who shot Alan in the police report and in the coroner's report. There's no doubt that the police officer shot himself in the foot, even though he put out a call that the officer was shot, which brings in every police and cowboy in town. When whatever anybody who's allowed to carry a gun comes to that scene, and they're all out there, and the danger that it creates when a police officer puts out a false call, such as that, allowing people to come because they believe the police officer has been shot by some other assailant. That's dangerous and not acceptable in our community, in a crowded place where people are having a single demise apart. So I think those are questions that have to be answered. The other thing is that clean that scene up immediately. They washed it down immediately. There was no chance to come back afterwards and look at it and see where the
So Alan was face up on his back.
Alan was face up.
Have you heard an answer about whether Officer Massa's camera was on? I've heard that maybe.
We don't know whether his camera was on. I'm a defense attorney. He says it wasn't on. That serves his interest. Can we determine whether it was on or not? We know that Oakland Police Department turn off their cameras, and they have been claiming that they're broken or they don't know how to work them. Thank you.
Thank you.